Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the EU Spectator. I'm your host, Catalin-Gabriel, and together with my colleague and friend, Nick Zalewski, we will focus today on the European project of the Republic of Moldova and the country's ambition to join the European Union. Our special guest is Mihai Mogâldea, a political analyst and deputy director of the Institute for European Policies and Reforms in Chișinău, Moldova. Together, we will explore Moldova's progress on its EU path, the challenges it faces, and the plans it has for advancing its European integration. Please stay tuned for a deep dive into one of the most pressing topics in Eastern Europe's political landscape. Nick, Mihai, thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you for the invitation, Catalin, and I'm looking forward for our discussion.
Sure. So, since gaining the independence in 1991, following the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the Republic of Moldova has navigated a very complex path toward European integration. Initially, Moldova sought closer ties with both Russia and the European Union, trying to maintain a balanced foreign policy. But however, during the early 2000s, under the leadership of Communist Party, especially President Vladimir Voronin, the country shifted its focus more toward the Russian Federation, slowing down the European integration process. At that time, the Moldovan government, led by Voronin, maintained a pro-Russian stance despite occasionally signaling intention to strengthen EU relations. Throughout the years, Russia has played a significant role in trying to help Moldova's European aspirations. Moscow has used its influence over Moldova's energy supply, the unresolved Transnistrian conflict, and its political networks to undermine Moldova's Western ambitions. Corruption and the rise of pro-Russian politicians loyal to the Kremlin further complicated the situation. Despite these challenges, Moldova's European project has remained resilient. And in recent years, with new political leadership, particularly after the election of pro-European leaders like President Maia Sandu, the country has renewed its efforts to join the European Union. Moldova signed an association agreement with the EU in 2014, marking a pivotal step towards alignment with the European standards. However, Moldova's journey is far from complete as internal reform and external geopolitical struggle continue to shape its path towards potential EU membership. So, I have a question for you, Mihai, because you are from Moldova. How have Russia's efforts to leverage corrupt politicians and its geopolitical influence impacted Moldova's progress towards European integration today?
Yes, we could say that that was one of the factors why we didn't achieve enough progress before 2021 on our path towards EU accession. Indeed, there was a high leverage of the corrupt schemes and also the control of oligarchs over the the leadership of the country, but also the management of public resources, and that created some requisites for let's call it a very unstable implementation of the association agreement, but also the key reforms that were needed for getting closer to the EU integration. Over the years, we can say that actually we advanced even in periods of time in which our country faced quite a lot of challenges of rule of law and democratic challenges before 2020, especially between 2016 and 2019. Even during that time, the government in place continued to implement the association agreement, and we achieved some good results in terms of economic and trade um, and trade connection or maybe approximation of the legislation for getting closer to the EU market. So at the sectorial level, I think the progress that we achieved after 2014 and before 2022 was key for getting us to this phase at which we are right now. Because it's not only about political will to advance the reform process, it's also about how much of the EU acquis was implemented, how much of the EU legislation was transposed into the national legislation. And Moldova did a few good steps in this regard in the last 10 years. And that's why right now, if I'm not mistaken, we are at around 35% of the needed level to close the EU accession negotiations. And why I'm saying that? Because there is a comparative analysis of the progress made by all the countries on the path towards EU accession, and the countries that joined the EU in the last 20 years, especially Croatia, Romania, Bulgaria. And there are some researchers who compared basically the results obtained by all the countries on their path towards EU. What they highlighted is that Romania, Bulgaria, and Croatia completed around or between 85% and 90% of the needed requirements at the legislative and policy level to join the EU. And this means basically the EU accession negotiations. And when looking at the expectations coming from the EU, we are at the level of 35%, and this was based on the report done by European Commission at the end of the last year. So it means that even in that period of time in which, as you mentioned, Russia had a very high leverage on the leadership of Moldova during the presidential mandate of President Dodon, for example, during the time in which Plahotniuc was leading the government and was controlling the governing process here in Moldova. Even in that time, there were a few small steps that were made in order to get to the level at which we are right now, and I think that's key for understanding why in some sectors Moldova is staying better than the Western Balkan countries. That's what, for example, the Western Balkan countries do not understand, how it is possible that some of the reforms that we are implementing right now were implemented in your country 7 or 8 years ago. And there are some examples of that. I mean, very, very, very specific reforms that were done in different sectors that happened here actually a few years ago and are not completed in the Western Balkan countries. And that's interesting when you look at it. And that happened because we had the association agreement,
Mhm.
and the Western Balkan countries had a different framework. So yeah, in a nutshell, basically that's the most important, I think, factor when we speak about that period of time. We can also refer to the period between 2001 and 2009 as well, in which, as you mentioned, there was a leadership that was focusing on getting closer to the getting closer to Russia, improving the trade economic relations with Russia. But at some time they actually did some actions towards EU integration, and that also helped getting us in the accepting the invitation to become part of the European neighborhood policy of the Eastern Partnership. That was key to give a push to the ministers, to the public officials in different sectors to actually work in this direction.
Mhm. Nick, regarding this, in your opinion, what steps does Moldova need to take internally to increase the distance from these external pressures and ensure a successful European trajectory? And when I name external pressures, I mean my mind goes to the Russian Federation.
Well, definitely the issue for Moldova is going, in my opinion, is that it's going to have to sort out the issue of Transnistria, the issue that it seems that still a relatively large portion so of the nation isn't necessarily that keen on joining the European Union, and almost where it would be the issue that I think a lot of key figures in the European Union would be concerned about would be what would this necessarily mean for Moldova, where if Moldova continues to move forward as we'll see with the referendum, but it does seem like a majority do support EU membership. But it's just the issue of, well, okay, but what will happen? You know, what will Transnistria do? Would potentially a war even break out where they would want to seek secession? And that's what I would like to hear more uh, from Mihai's point of view as someone living in Moldova. What type of threat is there? And then potentially too, just what would be another main concern would be Russia's pressure in regards to energy. The fact that whenever Russia wants to put pressure on Moldova, the minute the electricity contract comes up for renewal, like we saw a few years ago, that it then tried to charge an absurdly high amount that they knew Moldova wouldn't be able to pay. But the issue is, since Moldova is not yet integrated into the European Union with electricity, it still relies heavily on Russia. So that led to months of issues where could that potentially change people's minds, where they would be hesitant towards supporting EU membership if they fear that there could be further issues with something as simple as electricity? Because I think that's what a lot of people, especially in Western Europe, tend to forget about, how that this becomes such a major issue. Where when people don't necessarily live in nations where there's rolling blackouts for them, it seems so much simple to just, oh, well, you just need to stand up and go against Russia. Well, that's easier said than when there's issues where you have an unstable access to electricity. When you know as well as I do, people living in the European Union rely on electricity for almost every part of their daily life. So it's easier for them to say, oh, we'll just stand up against Russia. But if something like that is to happen again, that's a major threat. And unfortunately, the European Union hasn't done enough yet to counter that, freely help Moldova become independent from that external pressure.
Yeah, And we should recognize, as you and Mihai said, we should recognize that the current government in Chisinau and the current pro-European leadership led by President Maia Sandu has made significant strides in placing Moldova on the political agenda of major world capitals. Since her election, President Sandu has actively sought to strengthen Moldova's ties with the European Union and other Western allies. Her administration has focused on implementing crucial reforms aimed at combating corruption and fostering transparency, which are essential for aligning with the EU standards. The proactive approach has garnered the support of leaders from Washington to Paris, from Berlin to Oslo, who recognize Moldova's potential as a democratic partner in Eastern Europe and are eager to back its European aspiration. Also, President Sandu's efforts have not gone unnoticed as the international community emphasized the importance of Moldova's stability and European integration. With a global support, her government is working to navigate the complex geopolitical landscape shaped by external influence, especially by the Russian influence and regional tensions. This backing is critical for Moldova as it strives to build a more resilient economy and a more resilient and democratic institution while pursuing its European project. Sandu's administration represents a new chapter for Moldova, and we should recognize this, one that aspires to break free from past dependencies and forge a brighter, more integrated future with Europe. But Mihai, what specific challenges does Maia Sandu's government and Maia Sandu's leadership face in translating international support into tangible reforms and progress toward European integration?
I think the biggest challenge is related to the social and economic issues that Moldova is facing, especially because of the recent economic crisis and the high level of inflation. So there are still a lot of problems faced by the social vulnerable groups in Moldova. And while we indeed made important steps towards advancing with EU accession negotiations, let's not forget that in Moldova still there is an average pension that is around 150 euros, and there are a lot of people that are suffering from the economic issues, from the fact that they either have very small revenues or they are retired already and their pension is low. Given the fact that the migration is so high and people continued to live in the last years, and they will continue to live actually in the coming years, we need to think about how to improve the life of those who have little possibility to increase the revenues, to get a better job, or to do some steps towards opening a business or getting a better life. So there are these groups, Moldova, that exist, and we need to admit that their life continues to be very, very complicated because of the high prices, because of the high rate of inflation, and for these people, it will be quite a challenge to convince them that in the coming years step by step their life will improve with the support of the EU, and they will benefit from more opportunities and so on. And I'm saying that because some of them were or are already disappointed of the previous pro-EU governments that were in Moldova. Some of them felt or feel that some of the promises made by the current government were not implemented.
Like fill-up government, yeah.
Yeah, and because of the high inflation rate, although their salaries or their pensions increased in the last 3 or 4 years, they do not feel that, when they go to a shop and they buy some groceries. So that's the main issue: how to convince them that while social economic issues persist, and they will continue to persist in the coming years, we need to be more visionary and see the advantages that will be provided, especially for the Moldovan cities, the Moldovan villages, Moldovan communities in the coming years, and also to continue to invest in programs that are related to diaspora and attract the money from the diaspora back at home, provide them with opportunities to invest at home, and keep this connection between the diaspora and the people living in the country. That's also important in terms of elections and how the support for the pro-European parties will evolve in the coming years. And I'm saying that because again, we have a lot of young people leaving the country every year. We already have big issues in the educational system with universities that were closed because there are no students anymore, or a very low number of students, and it means that the young people between 25 and 35 are leaving. It means that they also bring with them their kids. And with that, you'll also have a big portion of the electorate actually living abroad in the diaspora. And for them, you need a different strategy to convince them that they should come to vote. They should come to kind of ensure this balance between some parts of the electorate that are pro-Russian, for example, in the country, and this pro-European electorate.
Sorry, Mihai, you anticipated my question. Is the Moldavian diaspora a pro-European one or a pro-Russian?
It's definitely a pro-European diaspora because up to 90% of it lives in the Western countries. At the last elections in 2021, but also in the last 8 years, especially at all the elections, we had a very low participation rate of the diaspora in Russia. There are usually up to 10,000 voters, not more than 15,000 voters, which means that they are less than 8-7% of the whole diaspora. So a very low number of people, or very low number of Moldovans currently living in Russia are participating in the elections. That's one thing. Secondly, the remittances from Russia decreased a lot in the last years. And it means that we already see this phenomenon of people leaving Russia and moving to other countries. And this happened especially after 2014, since we got the visa-free regime. More and more people from Russia decided to move to other countries like Poland, Czech Republic, where they could get the same or even a better salary than in Russia. but probably the working conditions were much better. They could, they could get integrated in the EU job market, so they decided to do that. Although some of them are working illegally with only the biometric passport, which is not, which doesn't offer you the right to work legally in the EU, they do it because they understand that this is a way to uh, get a better salary, but also better working conditions than in Russia. So right now, a rough estimation is that in Russia there is less than 10% of the whole Moldovan diaspora. Many of those living right now in Russia uh, probably settled there in the beginning of the 2000s, maybe the end of 90s. So they are already Russian citizens, actually, more than Moldovan citizens per se, because all their life, all their relatives are, or most of them are living right now in Russia. So I think that right now probably the number of those who are willing to migrate to Russia is very low, especially in the context of the war, and I don't see any possibility for this trend to change in the coming years.
Nick, what can the European Union do to improve the support for the European integration of Moldova?
This is going to be a bit controversial, but it does almost lead into
I'm asking
what.
this, I'm asking this in the context of a new European Union Commission, and we know that Austria it's one of the most anti newcomers in the European Union.
But it might work to its benefit because I'm almost hoping that this gets revisited because, as you're aware, currently member states are allowed to restrict migration from new member states up to 7 years. I would almost argue that this needs to be lengthened for the benefit of newer member states like Moldova because, and I was thinking about this when Mihai was speaking, talking about involving the diaspora, the issues with the low pensions, how that's definitely going to be a significant issue, especially when Moldova joins the European Union. It's very likely going to see economic growth like what that was seen in other former Soviet Union nations, which is going to be very quickly. But the biggest issue for that is the issue then for these pensioners, where while 150 euros isn't much now, that's going to be almost next to nothing 5-10 years after Moldova joins the European Union, and it sees even more, and it sees this fresh economic growth from enjoying new membership. But then the other issue is that while a lot of focus has been, which we see that the 7 years was created not for the benefit of helping these nations grow their economies and keep workers at home, it was because other member states, particularly looking at like the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, were very afraid that they were going to be flooded with people looking for jobs and it would hurt their own population. But now, and I focus on this quite a bit for my master's thesis, it actually becomes a big issue for these newer member states that it's only 7 years because it's not enough time to catch up and achieve economic convergence with wealthier member states. So it's going to only exacerbate, it's going to make the problem of the diaspora for Moldova even worse, where it might really aggravate and see younger people, as soon as they have the ability to work abroad, doing so because it will be easier legally, especially after those 7 years, since member states wouldn't be able to restrict it. It would almost be beneficial if we were to modify that because this isn't necessarily what we first thought of, where at first the main focus was on protecting the older member states, but in reality, it's protecting these newer member states and helping them achieve this economic convergence, which now we're seeing several member states, they're struggling to do so, such as Poland, where it's been growing economically significantly, but now it has an unemployment rate of less than 3%. And this was after having unemployment rate near 10% about a decade ago. So that means that, sure, while you had the incentive to go abroad and look for jobs elsewhere, now that it really needs the workers, it's hard to necessarily attract them back, which it's slowly doing so as people are slowly realizing that the difference in wages and cost of living too, which is another issue that people don't necessarily accept, where unfortunately so many people also look at, oh, well, wages are higher here, some life's better there, and then don't necessarily take into consideration how much rent costs, the taxes and everything. But at the same time, it's still, because wages are still lower in Poland, these other former Soviet Union member states as well, it makes it harder to still attract these workers back from Western Europe. And that's going to become an issue for Moldova as well. And the European Union really needs to focus on what's best for these newer member states in that regard and helping them catch up economically, because this is a goal of the European Union itself, not just newer member states to improve economically. So, and luckily, though, for Moldova, a unique advantage it's definitely going to have to compare to some of these other ones is the already having a smaller population, where it's definitely going to be potentially easier to enact reforms, enact new development projects easier. And that's what the European Union is going to have to focus on, definitely developing Moldovan infrastructure to a high level where that'll also encourage people to remain and after membership, rather than simply waiting their time into when they're legally allowed to work in other member states.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I hope that political leaders from Chisinau and Bucharest will watch this debate, because we really need to develop our infrastructure, our ties, because I really think that the European integration of Moldova will not be able, we will not be complete if we will not reconnect the both country. I mean, Romania and Moldova, and because this year it's a very important year for Moldova and for the pro-European forces in Chisinau. They face significant challenges as they campaign for the European integration referendum and the upcoming presidential elections. I really want, because we are close to the end of this episode. I really want to ask Mihai to comment a little bit this issue, because one major obstacle in the president influence of pro-Russian factions, which continue to leverage media narratives and populist sentiments to sway public opinion against the European integration. Additionally, the socioeconomic, as you mentioned, Mihai, the socioeconomic struggles that many Moldova citizens face, exacerbated by external pressures and internal corruption, create fertile ground for skepticism towards the benefits of joining the European Union. And political instability and public fatigue with reform process further complicate efforts to build a strong unified front in favor of European aspirations. As the forces navigate this complex situation, they must also work to effectively communicate the tangible benefits of EU membership to a population that remains worry of change. So, what are the Mihai? What are the change the chance that Moldova's pro-European agenda will be validated at the polls, and what would a failure to achieve this mean for this political pro-European forces and the future of the country's European aspirations?
Well, there is a good chance that there will be a high support for our European accession agenda and for our European aspirations, because we know that based on the previous elections and based on the general mood in the society, we know that there is a pro-European electorate that consists of around 65% of the people living inside the country. This is proved by all the polls that are done, and usually we have this split between 2/3 of the society that is pro-European and 1/3 that is pro-Russian. Or let's say that they are Eurosceptic to some extent. And given this picture that we have in Moldova, we can say that indeed there is a good chance for the upcoming elections, for the upcoming referendum to be successful for our European path. But for that, it's key to motivate the people and to make them understand the stake of these elections and of the referendum for our European aspirations. And that's not an easy task, especially for the politicians, for the public officials that are in charge of different economic, social, energy fields, and that are actually expected to offer explanations to the people why some things are not moving with the speed that the society is expecting. So the challenge is, as I said, to convince the people to understand and to convince and to make them understand the stake of all these electoral processes that are happening, but also the risk of a failed referendum, the risk of the elections that could actually bring to power a government that is, not very much engaged with our European agenda, and that is not willing to advance on this path. So there is also this possibility that some people could feel tired of going to the polls and continue to support the European parties that are usually promising a lot, but are delivering less than they promised. And this happened, a lot of times in the past. This happened also in 2021. When the government in power and the parliamentary majority came with a very ambitious agenda. They promised a lot of things.
And
some
unfortunately,
of them,
unfortunately, they failed to deliver reforms.
They failed to deliver in some fields. There is a common understanding that we are on the right path, that we indeed, we did some steps forward. some of the reforms were started and they will produce results in the upcoming years. I don't think they were I don't think the problem was with the actions of the government. The problem was with the high expectations that they created back in 2020, back in 2021, and of course this is normal for a democracy in which the parties are competing. Everyone is trying to get most of the votes, and then when they actually succeed to win the elections, so there is a problem with the capacities that they have, with the resources that they have, with the money that they have, and afterwards they understand that it's not that easy, and actually their job could take much more time. You then will confront with a lot of challenges that come from abroad. I think that here, back in 2020, 2021, the people now in power, I think they lacked enough maturity to understand that it will not be easy at all to succeed with their agenda, and it will take some time, and you will need to be much more determined with the actions that you do in order to speed up this reform process and get the results as fast as possible. And that was the problem. But nevertheless, leaving aside the performance of the current government, I believe that for any party that will come to power in the coming years, the biggest challenge will be related to the people that we can put in different positions, because unfortunately there is a small range of good professionals, especially in fields like environment, energy,
agriculture,
culture, natural resources, and so on. So, fields in which actually we didn't manage to grow those experts that are needed right now with the EU accession negotiations. Agriculture is another field. So there's so huge, or very important fields for our European integration process, and less relevant here in Moldova because we usually look at the social and economic issues, and less on the other things that are less important. But for our EU accession process, that will be key, because here we have the most of legislative acts. Here we have the EU that actually has some has some attributes and competencies in these areas. And then you will need the people, you will need the resources, and until you actually form a team that is good enough to move forward with the reform agenda, it will take some time. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that I'm worried about, how the process will continue in the coming years, if there will be a new government in place formed by hopefully more parties, because that's very good for democracy and for the sake of democracy. How they will leave aside all the personal maybe conflicts or some issues between them, and will work together on pushing forward the European agenda of or the reforms of related to the European agenda.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Mihai, and please allow me to conclude this insightful discussion on Moldova's European integration journey. For me, it is clear, and I hope that for all of us, it's clear that the road ahead, it's both promising and challenging. The commitment show by President Maia Sandu's and also the pro-European government and the support from the international community highlights the potential for significant progress. However, the hurdles that pro-European forces face underscore the importance of public engagement and informed dialogue in shaping the country's future. I think that the upcoming referendum and presidential elections will be critical junctures that will determine the trajectory of Moldova's aspiration toward EU membership. We encourage you, dear viewers, to stay tuned to this important project brought to you by the Experts for Security and Global Affairs Association. A special thank you to our guest Mihai Mogilda for his valuable insights and analysis today. We also extend our gratitude to the Institute for European Policies and Reforms in Chisinau for their dedicated work in promoting political and social awareness in Moldova and beyond. For those interested in the political and social landscape of Moldova, I encourage and I invite you to follow ePress informative materials and analysis to stay updated on the latest development. Thank you both for joining me in this episode, and we look forward to our next discussion. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Catalin. And good luck with your series of discussions. Hopefully, you'll have the chance to analyze the results of the elections, the results of the referendum, and
I will be happy to do this with you. And please receive my invitation to discuss about the results of referendum and the presidential election.
Yeah, with pleasure. And hopefully we'll have a positive result of both the elections and the referendum, and that will help us to move forward with our goals related to EU accession in the coming years.
I hope too. Thank you very much.